Okay, today we're going to be discussing whether ancient aliens came down and helped build the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is the claim by the ancient alien theorist. Erich von Däniken is the head honcho behind this theory. He wrote this in his book called The Chariots of the Gods, and this theory is discussed specifically in the History Channel Ancient Aliens series, Season 5, Episode 1, called Secrets of the Pyramids. Here are some experts consulted. We have Christopher Dunn, an engineer, John DeSalvo, a PhD in biophysics. Here are some stats about them. These men both appear in the episode. It's important to note here that while they do have higher educations, they are not educated in archaeology. So their claims have to be taken with a grain of salt because, again, they're not experts in what they are claiming to be experts in. So from the initial primary hypothesis, there are several secondary hypotheses that can be derived. So I'll let you read these. This list goes on and on, but here are just a few of the secondary hypotheses. And throughout the episode, several examples of positive evidence to support their claim is presented. So we'll go through these. The first is that there's a reoccurrence of pyramids throughout the world and within cultures who didn't have any contact with each other. So their question is, how could these cultures have built such similar looking structures? And their answer to this is that they must have had instructions from the same teacher. Extraterrestrial beings came down, gave all these different cultures across the world blueprints, and that's why they all look very similar. They also claim that since the body of Khufu, or the coffin, has never been found inside the Great Pyramid, that we cannot assume that the temple was a temple to him. They claim that it's possible that it was a temple to the ancient aliens who came down and instructed the Egyptians to build it. They also draw a lot of parallels, make a lot of connections to constellations and the order of the pyramids. The orientation of them aligns with Orion's belt. Also, these shafts within the pyramid align perfectly with certain constellations and stars, and they believe that this would be evidence of alien interactions because that would require a higher knowledge of solar system and the world that the Egyptians, they don't believe, had at that time. Again, similar kind of piece of evidence here from above the pyramid on the spring and autumn equinox. There are evidently 8 sides to the pyramid because the 4 main sides are slightly concave, and it is only visible this time of year, these 2 times of year. So this would require, again, greater knowledge of the solar system, and the fact that it can only be seen from above leads them to believe that it was extraterrestrial beings who wanted the pyramid constructed this way. And they also claim that the scale of the pyramid is far too great than anything that the Egyptians could have built with their machinery and their technology at the time, so it must have been using technology that hadn't been developed and was brought in from an outside source. So how is it possible? How did they build this pyramid? If they didn't have heavy machinery, if they didn't use bulldozers like we have now, then it must have been anti-gravity machines, right? Well, not actually. We can actually trace the trial and error and the progression of the building of the pyramid. So on the bottom left, we see a mastaba, which is a single-story square block structure. The first generations of Egyptian pharaohs were buried in this type of structure. And then on the top right, we see the stepped pyramid of Djoser. And it was built by Imhotep. He was a well-known physician, priest, and advisor to the pharaoh. he was an ordinary man. He was not an extraterrestrial. He was displayed in pictures as ordinary Egyptian. And this is the first kind of pyramid that we see, pyramid-like looking structure that we see, and for the time it was very impressive. But when we look closer at the details, it's actually kind of sloppy. You know, it's rough, it's made out of mud, bricks, it's really not as advanced. So this was the first attempt for building pyramids. Then as time goes on, we see the bent in 2649 BC. We have the stepped pyramid, which we talked about, and then in 2613 BC, we have the bent pyramid seen up here. And what happened, the story behind this pyramid is that it was originally constructed, instructed to be constructed at a 54.5-degree angle. But because the gravel deposit below caused instability, the builders kept having to improvise and put beams into the ceiling to keep it from collapsing. Eventually, Pharaoh Senefru decided to decrease the angle to 43.4 degrees. That's why we see the bent texture of it here. So this was kind of how to reconcile the issue of it collapsing. So again, trial and error, you know, it's an improvement from the stepped pyramid, but it's not perfect. Then we see in 250-89 BC, the Red Pyramid, also constructed under Pharaoh Senefru, and he finally got it kind of right? It's 4 triangular faces joined at an apex. It looks very similar, but again, this was not done without issues and, you know, time. So what else have we seen? What else have archaeologists found? They have found a daily detailed log of how the Great Pyramid was built. And they found it from Inspector Merer. He was kind of in charge of moving the limestone blocks from the quarry to the pyramid structure. And it details the work schedules, deadlines, challenges, typical things that we would see today in a job site. And it's written, detailed, and it really shows that it was human labor. It was not extraterrestrial labor coming out. You know, we don't see any mention of outside beings helping. It was, you know, people of the community, Egyptians helping to build this. It was an honor to be a part of this build for the pharaoh. Additionally, we see a huge gash in the landscape about 1,000 feet away, which is where the quarry was, where they mined the limestone for the Great Pyramid. And the location of the pyramid was built there because the quarry was so close. And we actually see there were copper tools, copper chisels found in this area. And we also found measuring tools. So it shows that the Egyptians had the ability to measure and make uniform blocks in the way that they did for the Great Pyramid. Finally, or additionally, there's also grooves within the stones that are in the pyramid on the inner surface that were meant for ropes. And so we can see in this bottom picture here, this was a picture that they painted showing how they moved the blocks. So all these men are standing here and they're holding ropes and they're pulling the heavy limestone blocks up using a ramp and pulley system. And finally, the inscription that was found within the ceiling of the pyramid when it was first discovered read, "We did this with pride in the name of our great king, Khnum Khufu." So the claim that the Egyptians built this for someone other than Khufu is easily refuted by the inscription that was physically chiseled in to the structure itself. So when we take in all the evidence and we think of Occam's razor, what could the alternative hypothesis be? You know, it is that ancient Egyptians built the Great Pyramid using their own skill, labor, and self-developed technology. If this is the case, then we should see a slow progression of improvement of the design and architecture, which we do. We saw the progression of mastabas to the stepped pyramid, to the bent pyramid, to the red pyramid, to the Great Pyramid. It's a slow progression. If this is the case, then we should see evidence of plans, blueprints, logs throughout the construction. We do. We found Inspector Moreira's log. Finally, if this is the case, then we should see evidence of how they did each step. And that is what we have. We have, pretty close to picture evidence here of how they did this. They very, very detailed with writing and inscriptions explaining it all. So unfortunately, I do not think that aliens came down and built the pyramids. And here is my works cited. Thank you very much.